never thought coming home from the hospital would feel like I was breaking into my own house. The taxi pulled away, and there I was, standing on the porch of the home I'd lived in for 38 years. I reached for the front door, but my key wouldn't turn. I tried again, jiggling it like maybe the cold had bent it. That's when I saw it, a shiny new silver padlock. My name was gone from the mailbox, replaced with a cheap plastic label that read, J&B Edwards, in Brooke's messy handwriting. This was my house. I paid for it. I painted the walls. I planted roses in the garden every spring. Then I heard a voice behind me, sweet but sharp, like sugar on a knife. Linda. Oh, you're back early. It was Brooke, my daughter-in-law. All confidence and yoga pants with her hair in a perfect ponytail. She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked annoyed, like I'd messed up her plans. I was discharged 2 days early, I said, my voice shaking a little. Where's Jason? She folded her arms. He's at work. We weren't expecting you yet. I noticed my suitcase and cane sitting beside me, probably placed there by the taxi driver. I picked up the cane. I can't get in. My key doesn't work. Brooke shrugged. Oh yeah, we changed the locks. Legal stuff. My stomach dropped. What legal stuff? She didn't even blink. Jason transferred the house into our name. It's better for taxes, remember? You signed the papers when you were recovering. Power of attorney and all that. I stared at her. I never agreed to that. She sighed, like I was being difficult. It's all done, Linda. You were still a little foggy from the stroke. It was for your benefit. My knees wobbled. I grabbed the porch rail, heart pounding. I'm not confused, I said, louder this time. That's my house. Across the street, I saw a curtain move, neighbors peeking out, pretending not to stare. Brooke tilted her head and spoke in a soft, syrupy tone. I think you're still a little emotional. Maybe you should go back to the care center. They said you'd be there till the end of the month. They cleared me. I left early, I said, trying to hold on to what was real. I live here. Jason and I live here now, she cut in, her voice turning cold. You should go. You're causing a scene. It's not a good look. I'll call you a ride. She walked back inside and shut the door in my face. Just like that. I stood outside for 26 minutes. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. Long enough to see neighbors whispering behind windows. Long enough for my heart to break into pieces. My cane wasn't just helping me walk anymore, it was the only thing holding me up. Grief, betrayal, and shame were too heavy to carry alone. So this is how it ends, I thought. But it wasn't the end. Not yet. 6 weeks earlier, I had woken up in a hospital bed with a dull ache behind my eye and a nurse calling my name. Linda, you've had a minor stroke. You're okay. The world felt blurry and slow, like I was moving through water. Words felt stuck. Jason showed up within the hour. Brooke came in after him, snapping a picture like she was visiting a museum. Oh Mom, she said, resting her cool hand on my arm. You scared us. The doctor said it was minor, and I was lucky. Jason nodded but didn't meet my eyes. We've been talking, he said gently, crouching beside me like he had something serious to say. You'll need time to recover, and the house has too many stairs and too much clutter. It's just not safe. I was still trying to understand when Brooke jumped in. We found a lovely care center 10 minutes away. It's peaceful. You'll have your own room, full-time staff, therapy. It's just temporary, of course, she added. Jason smiled. We'll take care of everything at home, bills, groceries, everything. And we'll visit every day. Every word they said sounded loving. Every look seemed caring. But now, standing out in the cold, locked out of my own life, I realized the truth. It wasn't care. It was a plan back then, when my mind was still foggy and my body weak. I trusted them. Of course I did. They were my family. I wanted to believe I still mattered, that I wasn't just a burden. So when they said Willow Glen was the best place for me, I nodded and went along with it. 2 days later, I was moved into a quiet building with beige walls, a twin bed, friendly nurses, and bingo nights. Over my little dresser was a framed quote that said, "Recovery is a journey, not a destination." I clung to that line like it was a lifeline. I kept telling myself this was temporary. Jason and Brooke were looking out for me. I was lucky. They visited twice during that first week. Jason brought me some magazines and a phone charger. Brooke showed up later with herbal tea and a small clipboard. It's just to help you keep track of your meds, she said with a smile. I was so touched, I actually cried after they left. I told the nurse that night, my son and daughter-in-law are amazing. I'm so lucky. She smiled, but something in her eyes flickered. It was a look I knew deep down, one I'd seen on students who turned in someone else's homework. It was quiet pity. A soft warning. But I didn't understand it then. I thought I was being cared for. I didn't realize I was being quietly pushed aside. During the first 2 weeks, they called every day. Brooke would greet me with her chirpy, "Hi Mom," and go on about the house. They were organizing the pantry, painting the guest bathroom, fixing that squeaky door I'd asked Jason about for years. Sometimes she'd hold the phone up and say, "Listen, Jason's hammering. He says it's therapeutic." Jason would say a quick, "Love you, Mom. You sound great." And that was all I needed. Just hearing my son's voice made me feel like I still had a place in the world. Every night after our calls, I felt a little more grounded. I'd lie back and imagine the house being taken care of, filled with warmth, Brooke fluffing pillows, Jason raking the leaves, a cup of tea waiting with lemon, just the way I liked it. I pictured them setting aside my mail, paying the bills, keeping everything running smoothly until I came home. Then the call stopped. At first, I didn't panic. Maybe they were just busy. Maybe they were planning a surprise, painting my room, or rearranging the furniture. I told myself anything just to avoid sinking into the silence. But day after day passed, and the phone never rang. The nurses were kind, but they weren't my people. My roommate, Sharon, snored all afternoon and mumbled in her sleep about old debts and lost husbands. The food was warm but bland. The days all blurred together, soft and forgettable. After a week without hearing from them, I left a voicemail. "Hi sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "just checking in. Hope everything's okay. I miss you." Nothing. 3 more days passed. Then I sent a text, "Let me know when you're free to talk. I'd love to hear how the house is coming along." Still no reply. I asked the nurse to check my phone. Maybe something was wrong with it. Maybe I'd somehow blocked them without realizing. She looked carefully, then shook her head and handed it back. "Nope, everything's working fine, Miss Linda. Maybe they're just distracted." Distracted. That word sank like a stone in my chest. I tried to hide how heavy it felt. I played bingo on Thursdays. I watched the same news shows every afternoon, the sound turned down low. I even picked up one of the books Brooke had brought and started reading. But every time I looked at the photo taped beside my bed, the one Jason took during our last family barbecue, I felt the silence growing louder. I kept telling myself they were just distracted. I didn't know that while I sat there, counting the hours between phone calls, they were tearing my life apart, room by room. One afternoon, I was sitting by the window, watching 2 squirrels chase each other up a tree, when Nurse Diane walked in holding a tablet. She smiled like everything was normal and said, "Hey Linda, do you use Facebook?" "Then why?" I asked, sitting up a little straighter. Diane walked over and sat beside me, her smile gentle but unsure. "I was scrolling through some home decor groups I follow," she said. "One of them features mid-century remodels. And look who showed up." She turned the tablet toward me. It was Brooke, standing in my kitchen like she was posing for a magazine shoot. One foot tucked behind the other, smiling confidently. The caption read, "Sneak peek of our latest home renovation. Modern meets classic. Can't wait to show you the full transformation. Hashtag new home vibes, hashtag kitchen goals, hashtag blessed," but it wasn't her smile that took my breath away. It was everything behind her. The kitchen cabinets I had painted with my own hands, light blue, done slowly with painter's tape and a shaky wrist after my surgery. The same ceramic rooster salt and pepper shakers that once belonged to my grandmother, now arranged like props. I took the tablet from Diane and zoomed in. My kitchen. But it didn't look like mine anymore. The counters were marble now, bright and cold. The floor tiles were gone, replaced by wide, expensive wood planks. My soft lace curtains had been ripped down and replaced with sleek, soulless blinds. "When was this posted?" I asked, though the words barely came out. "Yesterday," Diane said softly. I couldn't look away. Every little detail in the photo felt like a knife, small, sharp, and aimed straight at me. The lemon printed tea towel I used every summer? Gone. The Arizona magnet from the trip I took after my retirement? Disappeared. All of it wiped clean, replaced with something curated for likes and strangers' compliments. That's my kitchen," I whispered. Not to Diane. Just out loud. To no one. She didn't say much after that. Just sat quietly beside me as I handed the tablet back, my fingers trembling. But the image was already burned into my brain. They hadn't remodeled the house. They had erased me from it. That's when it all clicked. The silence. The cheerful phone calls that suddenly stopped. The push to send me to recover. They weren't holding my life together for me. They were tearing it apart, piece by piece, while I was too weak to stop them. That night, I called Jason 3 times. The first time, I just listened to his voicemail message. "You've reached Jason. Leave a message." His voice was flat. Distant. I couldn't decide if I wanted to cry or scream. I hung up. The second time, I whispered, "Hey sweetheart. I saw Brooke's post. The house looks different. I just wanted to ask, when can I come home? I didn't say more. I still hoped, deep down, that there was an explanation. That this was all just some big misunderstanding. But the truth was, I already knew it wasn't. The third time, I left a longer message. Jason, I don't understand what's going on. That was my kitchen. That's my home. You said this was just temporary, but it's been weeks. I'm feeling stronger now. I can take care of myself. I want to come home. I paused, then added more quietly, I miss you. I miss my house. Please call me. I sat there holding the phone like it was the only thing keeping me from sinking. But it never rang. No reply. No message. Nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, watching shadows stretch and shrink every time a car passed by. The soft hum of the heater. The creak of pipes. It all felt so far away. So unreal. In the silence, I started replaying every moment. Every conversation. Every paper I had signed. Had I missed something? Had they slipped something past me when I was weak and scared? I remembered Brooke sitting beside my hospital bed with that clipboard, saying, "It's just routine. Sign here so we can talk to your doctors." Had that been it? Was that the moment I unknowingly handed them the keys to my life? I felt stupid. Old. Powerless. And worst of all, completely alone. What do you do when the very child you raised uses your weakest moment against you? You start to doubt everything, including yourself. Families show their true colors when there's paperwork involved, Sharon muttered the next morning, peeling the lid off a pudding cup like she was talking about the weather. What do you mean? I asked, trying to sound casual, but my hand was clenched so tightly around my teacup it was shaking. I've seen it happen before, Sharon said with a shrug. A friend of mine went into rehab after hurting her knee. When she came out, her daughter had sold her house without even telling her. Said the place was too much to handle and moved her into a small senior apartment. Took her dog too. I blinked, shocked. Her daughter did all that? Yep, Sharon said, scooping up another bite of pudding like it was no big deal. Smiled the whole time. Said it was for her safety. Told her she'd adjust eventually. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the steam curling off my tea, trying hard not to picture my roses being ripped out of the garden or my china being boxed up and sold online. Sharon's eyes, sharp even though she walked slowly, locked onto mine. Why? You look like someone just pulled the rug out from under you. I hesitated, then said carefully, I think my son and his wife are making choices about my life without asking me. She let out a bitter little laugh. Well, join the club. People our age disappear unless we're paying for something. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say Jason wasn't like that he loved me, that I must be reading too much into things. That I didn't raise the kind of son who would take my house behind my back. But I stayed quiet, and that said more than I wanted it to. Sharon's voice softened a bit. Maybe it's not what you think. Maybe they're just being clumsy. But if your gut's telling you something's off, don't ignore it. Get someone to look at the paperwork. And don't trust anyone who smiles too much while handing you a pen. I gave a weak laugh, even though I didn't find it funny. She was right. Every time Brooke explained a form, she wore this perfect smile, the kind you practice in front of a mirror. The kind that looks kind until you realize it's hiding a trap. I did sign some things, I said quietly. I was still out of it. From the stroke. They said it was temporary, just for the medical stuff. Then you'd better check what temporary really means, Sharon replied, licking her spoon clean. That night, while Sharon snored softly behind me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My chest felt tight with dread. I started wondering just how much I'd lost, how much of my life wasn't mine anymore. The next morning, I didn't call Jason. I didn't call Brooke. I called my bank. It started simple, just a gut check. I wanted to feel like I was in control of something again. Maybe if I looked at my balance, maybe if I paid a bill or two, I'd feel like I was still here, still me. The woman on the phone was polite and professional. Can I verify your identity, ma'am? She asked after I gave her my name. Of course, I said, and gave her my birth date, address, and the last 4 digits of my social. Then there was a pause. She cleared her throat. I'm sorry, Miss Warner. I can't give you access to the account. You're no longer listed as the primary manager. I froze. What? She spoke slowly, like I couldn't understand her. The account was updated 5 weeks ago. There's a new representative. All activity now goes through them. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is it? Another pause. Brooke Warner Edwards. My breath caught. She's my daughter-in-law, I said automatically, though the words felt strange, like I was saying the name of someone I used to. No. I understand, the woman said kindly. But unless you come into a branch with ID and legal documents to revoke her access, I can't help. It's for your protection. That word again, protection. They'd said it when they put me in that care facility. They said it when they changed the locks. And now they were using it to keep me out of my own bank account. How did she get added? I asked, my voice shaking. She submitted a signed power of attorney. It's dated the week you were hospitalized. My hand went cold. I remembered. The clipboard, the rush, Brooke smiling and saying, it's just so we can handle your insurance stuff. That smile again, the one that hides the knife. I hung up without saying goodbye. My tea had gone cold. My whole body felt frozen. I didn't know what scared me more, realizing I no longer had control over my life or the fact that I hadn't even seen it happening. They didn't force their way in. I let them in. I handed everything over with trust. And they took it, piece by piece, without ever giving it back. 2 days later, I left Willow Glen without telling anyone. Not Jason. Not Brooke. I packed my things quietly and asked Nurse Diane to call me a cab. The ride home didn't feel like going home. It felt like crossing into enemy territory. Every street I passed, every tree I used to trim, made my stomach twist tighter. The taxi pulled up to the curb, and I slowly stepped out. My cane was in one hand, and an overnight bag rested in the other. As I looked at the house, my breath caught in my throat. Something felt off. The mailbox, the one where I used to leave little thank you notes for the mailman during the holidays, didn't have my name on it anymore. It used to say L. Warner. Now it just read The Edwards. I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things wrong. But I wasn't. I reached for my old house key, still hoping, deep down, that I was mistaken. Maybe they'd just changed the locks for safety. Maybe this wasn't what it looked like. But it was exactly what it looked like. The key didn't work. I was still fiddling with it when the front door opened. Brooke stood there, calm as ever, wearing leggings and a fancy blouse, holding a latte like she had all the time in the world. Linda, she said with a fake sweet voice. I didn't know you'd be getting out early. I took a step back. Why is the lock changed? She smiled like I was being silly. For security. There's been a lot of break-ins lately. But this is my house, I said, heart pounding. Brooke didn't even blink. Actually, it's not. I stared at her, completely confused. She held up a folder and tapped it gently. You signed the transfer papers, remember? Jason explained it all, for tax reasons. My voice shook. No, I signed a power of attorney, for medical stuff. She laughed. That was part of it. But you gave us the power to take care of other things too. You were still recovering from the stroke, and we figured we'd help out. It's all legal. I shook my head slowly. I never agreed to this. You did, she said flatly. You just didn't realize it. And right then, it hit me. This wasn't some mix-up. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. I want to talk to Jason, I said, barely getting the words out. He's at work, she said casually, taking a sip of her coffee. Honestly, he's exhausted. This whole transition has been a lot for him. We're finally getting settled. You showing up now, it's just going to confuse things. I looked past her into the house, my favorite chair, my family photos. Everything's still there, but somehow it felt different. The air inside smelled off, like something had gone sour. Brooke stepped outside and gently pulled the door halfway shut behind her. Her voice dropped. You should go, Linda. Jason found a great assisted living place for you. It's affordable. You'll have your own room. No stress. I didn't move. I know this is hard, she added, pretending to sound kind. But we had to think of the future. You're not really able to live on your own anymore. It's better this way. My legs felt weak. I gripped my cane tighter. Not capable? I wanted to scream, to cry, to break something. I wanted Jason to walk out and tell me it was all a big mistake. That he loved me. That I still mattered. But no one came. It was just me. Me, my cane, the porch, and the echo of my name, already erased. And that's when I stopped waiting to be rescued, because the people who push you out, they're never the ones who open the door again. I don't even remember walking away from the house. Just the ache in my knees as I stepped off the porch. Just the sound of the door shutting behind me, like I was some stranger trying to sell something no one wanted. I sat at the bus stop a few blocks away for almost an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there, staring at the sky turning gray as the sun dipped behind the trees. My cane felt heavier than usual. The bag on my lap pressed into my legs, but I didn't move it. Eventually, I picked up the phone and dialed one number. Nancy. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer. Life just got in the way. But I knew hearing her voice would be like grabbing a lifeline. Linda, she answered, a little breathless like she'd rushed to the phone. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. Just air. Linda, are you okay? I need a place to stay, I whispered. She didn't ask why. She didn't make me explain. She just said, I'll put the kettle on. By the time I got to her house, Nancy had fluffed the couch pillows and pulled out her nicest blankets, the ones she usually saved for the grandkids. She made me tea exactly the way I liked it, too much honey and a splash of milk. She didn't push. She just sat with me, quiet, until I was ready to talk. And when I told her everything, the care center, the bank, the locks, Brooke's smirk, my name gone from the mailbox, Nancy's face changed. First concern, then shock, then something like anger. You need to fight this, she said, setting her mug down with a sharp click. They can't just take everything, I said, my voice shaking. I signed something back at the hospital. A power of attorney. Jason told me it was just so they could speak to the doctors. Nancy leaned back in her chair, looking right at me. Did you read it? I looked down. I trusted him. She didn't say anything right away. When she finally did, her voice was gentle, almost sad. That's the worst part, isn't it? Not the paperwork, not the house, him. The fact that it was Jason. I nodded slowly. Nancy's voice grew stronger. This happens more than people think. They wait until you're weak, sick, tired, confused. They smile, speak sweetly, and quietly take everything. But listen to me, you are not helpless. Your mind is sharp. You've still got fight in you. And you've got me. My throat tightened. It had been so long since someone reminded me I wasn't alone. Nancy poured more tea into my cup and added, You're not stepping foot back in that house unless you decide to. On your terms. Understand? I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if I could believe I had any power left. But something inside me, buried under all the numbness, started to wake up. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was survival. But it was there. The next morning, she slid a flyer in front of me between a plate of toast and my half-drunk tea. It said, Elder Justice Legal Aid, protecting seniors from financial abuse, coercion, and fraud. They helped my cousin last year, Nancy said as she refilled her coffee. Her son tried to remortgage her house without asking. These folks took one look at the paperwork and froze it all in a week. I stared at the flyer. Then at her. You think this is abuse? Nancy didn't hesitate. What else would you call it, Linda? They took your house, your name, your money. They locked you out like you were a stray. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a con. I let out a shaky breath. I still can't believe Jason let it happen, she said gently, cutting in. Whether he was behind it or let Brooke do the dirty work, it happened because he allowed it. I looked back down at the flyer. There was a number at the bottom. I picked up my phone and dialed. The woman who answered sounded calm and professional. She asked my name, my age, and what had happened. When I mentioned the power of attorney, she stopped me. Do you have a copy of the document? She asked. No, I said. I signed it at the hospital. Brooke had it. I never read it, I was still recovering from a stroke. There was a pause. That's actually helpful, she said. If it was signed while you were mentally or physically impaired, and if you didn't have a lawyer, we can challenge it. My heart skipped a beat. You can? Absolutely. But we'll need proof. Emails, texts, anything they gave you. And we'll need medical records from that time. She gave me a list, and I wrote it all down carefully. That evening, I opened my old email account on Nancy's tablet and started digging. I found a photo Brooke had sent of the kitchen update. I found texts from her, don't worry, we've got everything covered while you recover. I found a message from Jason during that first week, just sign whatever Brooke gives you. It's all standard. That word, standard, burned now. It felt like a lie dressed up in soft clothes. I pulled every receipt I'd saved from the care center out of my wallet. I made a note of every nurse I remembered seeing, every date I'd missed medication because I couldn't speak clearly. The pieces started to form a picture. A painful, clear picture of someone taken advantage of when they were most vulnerable. Nancy helped me organize it all in a binder. She used colored tabs, texts, emails, bank records, photos. You're going to walk into that office with a case, she said, snapping it shut. You're not just a victim. You're their worst nightmare, a victim who writes things down. For the first time in days, I smiled. She was right. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I was too weak, too tired, too old to fight. But they were wrong. They picked the wrong old woman. 2 days later, I held it in my hands, the document that changed everything. The legal aid team had finally tracked down a copy. It was a slim packet, filed quietly at the hospital. Plain cover. A label at the top, limited power of attorney. I stared at it for almost 10 minutes before I could even bring myself to read it. The wording was dry and confusing, on purpose, I guessed. But hidden in the small print, Just below a line about routine administrative authority, it said, "Authority shall include, but not be limited to." I stared at the paper, heart pounding. This wasn't just about them seeing my medical files, they'd given themselves control over everything I owned. That document didn't have an end date, no clause that said I had to be checked by a doctor. Again, no outside person to make sure it was fair. It was a blank check, and they used it. And Jason? He had signed it as a witness. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling. The memory hit me hard. I had been lying in a hospital bed, foggy, from painkillers the nurse gave me. Jason held my hand, and Brooke was right beside me, flipping through papers. "You trust us, right?" she had said. "We just want to make things easier while you rest." I nodded. Of course I trusted them. But that trust was the weapon they used to take everything from me, while pretending to help. I handed the paper to Karen, a lawyer from the legal aid office. She had sharp eyes and a voice that was both kind and firm. She read it once, then again, slower. Her lips pressed together. "This was written to seem harmless," she said, "but they used it like a crowbar." "Can cancelite?" I asked. "You already did," she replied, "just by calling us. But we'll make sure the court sees what happened too. We're filing for injunctive relief." "Injunctive relief?" I repeated, unsure. "It means," she said, standing up, "we're putting a legal freeze on your home. They can't sell it, borrow against it, or tear it apart. They don't get to make money off stolen control. Not on our watch." I felt my breath catch. Not on our watch. Not anymore. That night, I placed the paper, the power of attorney, beside the binder Nancy and I had built full of documents. It felt strange, holding the proof of how I'd been tricked. But for the first time, I didn't feel helpless. I saw what they did, and that meant I could start undoing it. I disappeared from their lives, but not from the fight. While Jason and Brooke posted smiling selfies in my living room, I sat in the legal aid office, printing out bank records and signing forms. They posted cheesy captions like "Home Sweet Home Red Heart #blessed, while I was signing affidavits, tying my name back to the truth. Karen put it best, "They count on you being quiet. That's how they get away with it." Well, I wasn't quiet anymore. We built our case, piece by piece. We started with the hospital timeline, when I had my stroke, the meds they gave me, the fog I was in. We included every text Brooke had sent while I was recovering, especially the one where she wrote, "Don't stress, Linda. We'll take care of everything." Karen smiled when she saw that. "Everything, huh? That'll sound real nice in court." I didn't speak to Jason. I didn't reply to his texts or answer when he called twice in 1 week, probably starting to panic when the bank flagged his account or the bills bounced back. I stayed with Nancy. We had quiet dinners. Sometimes in silence, other times listing every awful thing Brooke ever said to me. Nancy called it rehearsing for righteous revenge. But the pictures kept coming. Brooke posing in my kitchen with a fancy snack board. Jason clinking glasses on my patio. A smug Thanksgiving post showing off the living room I decorated for over 30 years, captioned, "New Beginnings." They had no idea what was coming. They didn't see the court papers being filed. They didn't see the judge signing the freeze on my house. They didn't know a court date was set. They were laughing on my porch while I was organizing evidence in folders. I wasn't trying to ruin them. I was trying to get me back. And if doing that exposed them for what they really did, then maybe they'd finally learn there's a difference between inheritance and theft, between love and control, and between a quiet woman and a woman who's been quiet for too long. Then came the knock on the door, but it wasn't me knocking. It was the sheriff's deputy standing next to me. He wore dark sunglasses, held a clipboard in one hand, and a folded court order in the other. He didn't say much, but his presence said everything. Brooke opened the door with her usual fake smile, about to say hello, then saw the badge. Her eyes flicked to me, and her smile dropped. "What is this?" she snapped, stepping back. The deputy spoke calmly, no emotion in his voice. "I'm here to deliver and enforce a court order. This property is now under immediate legal freeze. It's part of an elder abuse and deed fraud investigation." Jason showed up behind her, barefoot and holding a half-eaten apple. He froze mid-bite when he saw me. I stepped forward, not into the house, just up to the doorway. "Hello, Brooke," I said softly. She stared at me, mouth open, trying to come up with something to say. "This is our house," she finally said. "No," I replied, looking her straight in the eyes. "It's mine. And the court agrees." The deputy stepped forward and handed her a folded paper. It was the court order. "You can't do this," she shouted, her voice rising in panic. "I can," I said calmly. "The court will decide whether those signatures were legal. Until then, you're not allowed to sell, change, or move anything on this property." Jason still hadn't said a word. He just stood behind her, staring at the paper. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't deny what they'd done. He didn't even move. He just watched everything fall apart. Brooke's voice cracked. "You vindictive old," the deputy raised a hand. "That's enough, ma'am. You've been served. You can fight it in court, but today, you will follow this order." Brooke turned and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood there for a moment, listening to her muffled yelling from inside. Then I turned and walked down the steps. My cane tapped the concrete with every step, each one like a quiet sentence. "You don't erase someone like me. You don't steal a lifetime of work with a fake smile and a pen. And you don't silence someone just because they've been quiet long enough to make you comfortable." I didn't need to say another word. The house was frozen. But I was finally moving forward. The courtroom felt cold, not in temperature, but in mood. The walls were covered in dull wood paneling, the vents hummed above us, and papers rustled softly as the lawyers prepared. I sat straight in my chair, hands folded neatly in my lap, wearing the navy blue suit Nancy had picked out for me that morning. "You look like a woman who still owns her mind," she'd said as she zipped it up. "Let them try and say otherwise." Across the room, Brooke sat at the plaintiff's table in a white blouse with her hair pulled back tight, trying to look proper and innocent. Jason sat beside her, eyes on the floor, shoulders stiff like he wished he could disappear. Their lawyer, a young man in an expensive-looking suit, stood first. "Your Honor," he began smoothly, "we believe Miss Warner's mental state was compromised when she signed over power of attorney. She had just suffered a stroke and was heavily medicated. Her children acted only in her best interest." He waved toward Brooke. "Mrs. Edwards made sure her mother-in-law's property and finances were handled responsibly. Everything was legal." Karen stood up. "Objection. If my client, Ms. Warner, was too unwell to handle her money, then she was definitely too unwell to sign over legal control. They can't have it both ways." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Go on." Karen stepped forward with a thick folder in her hands. "Your Honor, here are medical records from the day the papers were signed. Ms. Warner was on medication that clearly affected her memory and understanding. She didn't have her own lawyer, and the entire process was managed by the same people. Who stood to gain the most? She handed over hospital logs, nurse reports, even a written statement from my old roommate, Sharon, from the rehab center. Then came the real proof, recordings. Voicemails from me. Messages they ignored. Instagram posts from Brooke showing off remodeling work before the house was even legally hers. And then they played the video of my sworn deposition. My voice came through steady and clear. I wasn't confused, I said. I was exhausted. I trusted them. I thought they loved me. The courtroom went silent. Even Brooke seemed to shrink in her chair. The judge turned to me. "Do you have anything to add?" I stood slowly. "I gave my son everything," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I paid for that house. I worked my whole life to keep it. I never planned to give it away, not while I was still alive." I looked straight at Jason. I thought if I made life easier for him, he'd protect me. But instead, they treated me like I didn't matter. Jason didn't look up. The judge took a few notes, nodded, and turned to Brooke. "Do you have anything to present that disproves this?" Brooke shifted in her seat and leaned toward her lawyer, but she didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. They had walked in expecting the judge to side with them automatically. They thought I'd come in weak and unprepared. But I wasn't empty-handed. I brought the truth. I brought the proof. And I brought a kind of strength they never thought I had. The judge's gavel hit the desk, once, sharp and final. "Based on the evidence," the judge said, "this court finds that the transfer of property from Linda Warner to Jason and Brooke Edwards was done under misleading circumstances and without her full understanding." I held my breath. My heart stopped. The power of attorney was misused far beyond what it was meant for. It is now cancelled. The transfer of the house deed is reversed. Ownership goes back to Linda Warner, starting immediately. I didn't move. I just sat there as those words sank in, solid and final, like dust settling after a building collapses. Brooke gasped beside Jason. Her calm mask shattered in one loud, panicked breath. "This is insane," she cried. "She doesn't even want that house. She can't even climb the stairs." The judge didn't even blink. "You may appeal this ruling if you want. But it stands as is." Karen leaned over and gently touched my arm. "That's it," she whispered. "You won." Brooke spun toward Jason, slapping his arm. "Say something. She's lying." But Jason didn't say a word. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He just slid his hands into his pockets and walked out. No goodbye. No apology. Just silence as the courtroom doors closed behind him with a heavy thud. Brooke sat back down, her face reddened, her mouth moving with quiet, angry words no one could hear. The confident smile she always wore like armor had finally cracked, falling apart under the weight of her own pride. I stood slowly. My legs were shaky, but I stood tall. My name was mine. Again. My home was mine. My life was mine. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because there's no joy in realizing the people you loved were okay with using you. No satisfaction in watching them fall apart when all you ever wanted was to be safe with them. Just a deep, quiet sadness that you ever let them close enough to hurt you. Outside the courtroom, Nancy was waiting with her arms wide open. "You did it," she whispered as we hugged. "We did," I said back, holding her tightly. Karen walked up with a stack of paperwork in her arms. "We'll have the reversal officially filed this week. I recommend putting the house into a protected trust, just in case. This kind of thing won't happen again." I nodded. No, it wouldn't. Not on my watch. Not while I still had breath, memory, and a name I had fought to get back. The locksmith finished before noon. By 12:05, their keys didn't work anymore. I stood in the front hallway, the new locks clicked shut behind me. The air smelled like lemonwood polish. The furniture was still there, but the home I once knew was buried under their bland paint and their cheap renovations. This wasn't comfort. It was just a shell now, a copy of something they'd never understood. I had just finished putting away a box of my old curtains when someone banged on the door, 3 quick, angry knocks. I didn't jump. I opened the door slowly. Brooke was standing on the porch, her lip gloss smudged, sunglasses pushed up on her head like she was coming back from brunch, not from betrayal. Jason stood behind her, hands in his pockets, face tight. "You changed the locks?" she asked, wide-eyed like I'd done something shocking. "Are you serious?" I stepped aside but didn't let them in. "I took back what's mine," I said, calm and clear. Brooke shoved past me anyway, her heels stabbing into the rug I was planning to toss. She looked around like she was inspecting a crime scene. "You don't get to just erase us," she snapped. "This was our home." "No," I said. "It was my home. You erased me." Jason stood near the door, still not moving. I started grabbing pillows off the couch, especially the white velvet one Brooke loved, and dropped them into a trash bag. Brooke let out a bitter laugh. "Wow. You're actually doing this. Throwing away everything we did. You're that petty?" I paused. "You stole from me," I said. "I'm not being petty. I'm protecting myself." "We made it better," she shouted. "You were alone. You were confused. We made this place livable." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I didn't ask for your improvements.